Duff McWhalen finally succeeds in being so retarded it's genius. What the hell else am I supposed to say about that name? And what am I supposed to say about this stage? It's a complete auto-scroller, save 20 or so seconds which offer nothing out of the ordinary. The only planning here is avoiding damage, and it isn't so much planning as it is getting familiar enough with the obstacles to be safe. I don't really take anything but a rudimentary path to avoid damage here, and the rest of the can pretty much go the way it feels like in any given attempt. And there weren't many of those to begin with. Although this level seems to give people a lot of issues, it's not particularly hard as long as you know the process to deal with the sub's different methods of attack. It's even less of a worry if you can use the C-sword and just sort of stumble your way through things half-mindedly until you win. It was so damn boring, I kinda went out of my way to design a route that let me dodge the purple fish things rather than blast them repetitively for 2 minutes. Doesn't affect my speed any, so sue me. I can't fault the level too much. It's an original idea, and it's actually pretty cool your first few times through, which is all you should ever really need when you're playing through this game. Losing stupid attempts based solely off the length of the segment steals the appeal a little bit. Well, that's all I had to say. See you in 5. Oh, Christ. Okay, X5. Might as well offer myself some justification for why I'm actually playing through this blasted thing so readily. As far as the rest of the series stands, X5 is a really peculiar game to me, and to destroy probably any credibility I might have right from the get-go, it's my third favorite X game, and I do mean over 4 and 3. Really, it's kinda hard to justify why I find it such a good game, because X5 is really bipolar. For every good design choice, there's probably 2 that kinda shit all over it, and the great additions are obviously things like the ability to use both characters in the same game. It allows for 2 completely different styles to be applied wherever you feel it's necessary, and the stage design in the game actually does call for one character over the other a lot of the time. But that's marred a little by bad design choice. First off, the fact that just by choosing one character you can completely destroy a part on another, especially without any forewarning, is just stupid, especially since the Z-Buster is almost completely useless in this game, whereas the 4th armor is something that I can see a new player using really often, especially because, like I said, this one's designed to be a little less friendly to unarmored X than the others. Second of all, to put it simply, X5 suffers from character bias, kinda like Megaman and Base did. X is not welcome in this game. There are countless situations where the barrages of enemies are in ludicrously tight passages, and it pretty much forces X to tank hits, especially when he's unarmored. In stages like Duff McWhalen's, or Squid Atler's and Izzy Glow's, the X-Buster becomes really inadequate, especially when you compare it to Zero's Saber. On the opposite side of things, there are certain items that are only possible to get with X, and I'm not talking about the armors, I'm talking about things as rudimentary as hearts. This makes maxing out your favorite character impossible, and that's something that OCD gamers like me find really infuriating. The next great idea are the addition of parts. This is something that the X series was kinda lacking by this point. Adding such a variety of skills and bonuses to pick and choose from offers some freshness to X's armor, which was getting a little stale by this point. And more importantly, it gives Zero a really appreciated counterpoint to X's armors because he originally has nothing. The problem, though, is again the execution of this. First off, obtaining the parts is way too obscure, and to even get an optimal amount of them, you need to actively kill yourself to artificially lower the game timer for some pointless rank and boss level. Overall, X5's biggest flaw is pretty much the fact that it suffers from overclocked design. Several gimmicks like ducking, boss levels, virus gauges, a timer, they just don't justify their point. Especially the timer, because really counterintuitive to the exploration aspect, because this game has some of the most well-hidden items that occur in the series. And having major outcomes in the story and even your own character control rely completely on chance feels a little half-assed. Really, that's the summation of what I'm trying to say here. X5 suffers from a lack of editing. It seems like every idea that a developer put forward was included in the game without any real selection process. Several really ingenious and fun level gimmicks don't really deliver when you scrutinize them, and they become pretty annoying over repeat playthroughs. There are just too many confusing factors to what's meant to be a visceral, simple action game. Force-feeding a hastily translated story down our throats, especially with unskippable dialogue, and especially with fucking Alia, feels pretty insulting. And there are also way too many dead ends you can find yourself scratching your head at because the gameplay mechanics are left in the dark. Now, the cincher for me is, even though there's a mound of things to complain about, it really all boils down to nitpicking, and I think the benefits of this game really overshadow the problems. The big factor for me is the fact that this game has what I think are some of the most unique and involved levels in the series. There are some seriously cool ideas at play here, and the gameplay never really repeats itself. Even in situations that might have iffy payoffs, it never feels dull. The second aspect is the fact that this game has my favorite overall bosses in the series. Unlike a lot of the later games in any series that concern this franchise, that mostly consist of mix and match rehashes of old patterns, almost every fight in X5 has something unique about it, and the bosses also have some of the funnest AI there is, because there's lots of involved patterns and moves. X6 gets even more involved here, but it's at the expense of tolerability. The other big deciders for me are the music, which is easily my second favorite OST outside the first, and also just the countless throwbacks to almost every prior game, even the obscure ones. It never feels contrived, unlike some of the things that crop up in ZX Advent, just as an example. And it's even more fun when these throwbacks show up in gameplay. I know I also said that was part of the problem for some people, but as far as I'm concerned, it adds a spice to the game that, after you played through the first 4, you were kind of looking for something like that. There's just something to the ambition about X5 that I appreciate, and gameplay that really boils down to an amalgamation of the original series and the X series feels pretty neat. Even though the story was rushed, like I said, it still ties together all the plot elements that link the X series to the original series, and more importantly, this was intended to be Infinite's conclusion to the X series, so in that sense it definitely feels pretty appropriate. I'm getting completely off track at the end of this though. That's Duff McWhalen down, and believe me, there was nothing missed in not describing the guy because he's a complete fucking pushover. So, I'll see you next time for the Skyver. And yes, I said that with a straight face.